if that's okay with you, Dana, I would like to ask you to do your presentation maybe right now as an example. So explain to us these questions. What's your wicked problem? What are some of the artifacts that you used in your design thinking? And what are some of the insights that you learned in your design thinking project?
So yeah, I'm happy to share my project to you all because I'm thinking that this is a measure of how clear I'm presenting my projects. So if you understand these presentations, then I can say that my project is clear. Anyway, my project title is Addressing the Wicked Problem of Indonesian Secondary Ethno-STEM Education through INSPIRA Mobile's serious game. So I would like to explain what ethno-STEM education is. So the idea here is to combine the Western STEM, which is we actually or usually have in our national school or formal school curriculum, with the indigenous STEM, which is rarely explored in the school. Why is this approach significant for students? There are some reasons actually. The first one is to make the STEM education relevant for students, especially indigenous students, because they can see that the application of STEM education in schools is connected to their daily lives at home. So this is actually the significance of ethno-STEM educations. But in the context of Indonesian secondary educations, there is an effort from the government to apply ethno-STEM education in the national school curriculum, but there are problems there. The problems comes from different stakeholders. That is why it's complicated and we call it wicked problems. And in my project, I would like to address the problem using mobile serious game, which is I called it as INSPIRA, stands for Indigenous STEM Practices and Innovation for Resilience Indonesia. So here you can see the picture. It's an illustrations of how the serious game, mobile serious game of INSPIRA works. It's connecting the urban and rural school teaching and learning in STEM. So the games is actually not only for students, but also for the teachers, because the problems comes from these primary users. Throughout this project, I'm justifying how this and how teachers and students are chosen as the end users, and how this game address the problem. So I start the project or this assignment with the review of assessment task one, the design approach that I use, which is a hybrid design framework, primarily using the double diamond, which I combine with several methodologies. As in my first assignment, I found that the double diamond design approach has some weaknesses, which need to support with other methodology, especially in this project. So I use 4 different approaches to support this, actually 5 to support the design, double diamond design method. In part 2 or design solution, I start with the detailed project timeline, which is if I stop sharing this and share the Miro link of it. I'm trying to map out what activities or events I did and I haven't done yet in each of the double diamond design process, and the artifacts in each stages, and also the stakeholders info. For example, in Discover, the purpose of this stage is to understand the wicked problems, and this stage is done in month 1 because this timeline is actually for the first 6 months of the projects. And I try to expand what I did in week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on, what events in each week, and the artifacts and the stakeholders info. You can see here, I explained that the stakeholders info are pseudo, which included real and hypothetical stakeholders. So for example, like project team, the real one is me. and the pseudo is the game developer and the other project team. And also for the teachers and students, they are pseudo as well, because I can have only access to the urban students and teachers, which are my colleagues at my school, and the rurals are hypothetical based on research. So after I'm doing this, I'm thinking that this timeline is detailed, but it's not really explaining the process. You can't really see the process from the beginning and the end because they are words. So I'm trying to make a visual that more clear to see how the process running from the beginning to the end. So I transform that table into this visual to make it more easier and clear to see the process. So the discover phase start in month 1. You can see what I did in each week and so on until the last stage. All right, so continue here. The first stage of Double Diamond is actually dealing with the problems. So it's the process of finding the kernel problems or the central problem and which stakeholders are the primary users, which give the best impact if you focus on them. So here I did a desk research to do the research and to find out the kernel problem. So this is my wicked problem map and the relationship between stakeholders here. So there are actually 4 to 5 stakeholders that involved in these wicked problems: the government, the teachers, the students, parents, and indigenous community. Okay, from here, from the desk research, I actually trying to see which stakeholders are giving the best impact if I focus on them. Let me share. So from here, this is the summary of my desk research, the stakeholders in my the Ethno-STEM education. So I can see there are some stakeholders and the relationship of each stakeholders to the problem, to the design process, and their level of influence, level of interest, and the communication strategy. And to make it clear again, just like before, I do the visualizations, the metrics, stakeholder metrics, like this. And I can see that teachers and students are having high level of interest and high level of influence. So they must be actively engaged and collaborated with in the project. So from here, I decided to focus on teachers and students. And the next step is doing informal interview with them, with the end users, which are teachers and students. So here I have a link of the interview plan, which includes the questions and lots of the things to plan the interview. And then the empathy maps. After the interview, I do the empathy maps. And then after that, synthesizing the cross-group interview insights. So what insights from that? And then at the second stage, which is define, I did persona and then defining the kernel problems using this method, which is called 5 whys techniques. And then I identified the kernel problems, and from the kernel problems, I continued with the next steps of the double diamond design process. Last thing I would like to share is framing the low fidelity of wireframing walkthrough.
Yes, that was a good part of your research as well.
So from the interview and the desk research, I got lots of informations which implicate the design criteria, the digital solutions. Actually, I developed a checklist from this interview and desk research. I developed a checklist to choose which platforms or digital platforms best to address the kernel problems. And I ended up with mobile serious game and then some design criteria. And from that, I turned this criteria into wireframes, low fidelity wireframes. And then the games look like something like this. So this is the opening screen. The teachers and students will input their details and start the game. They choose an avatar because this game inspired by the Sims game, if you know it, where you are moving with avatars in a virtual world, something like that. So I included the indigenous attires, the costumes of indigenous, which they can choose. And actually, the big idea of this serious game is to involve all the indigenous knowledge, culture, and practices of Indonesians ethnics, which around more than 300 ethnics. But for the first one, as an example in this project, I used traditional salt farming in Bali because I'm from Bali and I'm familiar with that as an example of the game. So after that, actually the game consists of 3 stages. Stage one is problem introduction. Stage two is concept mastery. And stage three is problem solving. So stage one, we introduce the problems and the mechanics of the game, how to move the avatars and so on. And the players will be there in the virtual world of traditional salt farming, and the players will, approach the farmer, and then there will be a video from the farmer popping up telling about the problems, what the problem. And then after that, move to stage two, concept mastery. Here, actually, the problem needs the students design or to adapt the traditional farming, because there are problems like climate change, sea pollutions from the boat, something like that affect the existing method and affects the quality of salt. So the students need to use their STEM knowledge to solve this problem. They're working in groups, but they need to master the related concept first. And I do this in jigsaw approach, where the students need to choose the mastery they want. If they want to master physics, then they choose that, and chemistry, biology, and mathematics. So they choose expertise. This is the virtual lab that I included in the game. For chemistry, they can ask teacher as well. Teachers are there, and they can monitor what's happening, what students do. If they experience problem, teachers can send chats, students can chat with teachers. So this kind of teacher screen, this is the teacher screen that the teachers can see the performance of each student, right? And they can do which questions they are correct or wrong. And they can check it and send message to the students. So I think that's overall for it, sir.
Perfect. That's a very clear. That was a very good wireframe. And this is what, so one thing I really want to see, especially in your prototypes, is how if someone is a user of this technology that you have designed, like a serious game, what will they do? What are some of the key functions? How do they use the application? What are some of the options that they have in front of them? If they click on one particular option, what will happen? So these are, and I think Donna's example is a good example of what you should do in your prototyping stage. Of course, you don't need to get as detailed as Donna. Donna's project is very well thought out. I think he has done a marvelous job.